We'll start in BC because it's kind of got a little bit of the most activity right now from the wildfires that are occurring there. So you can see that around Kamloops, Merritt, down in Princeton, there's a lot of wildfire smoke and activity. So this is right now what you're looking at is the fire weather index. And what the fire weather index is it's just a ranking that kind of provides the overall picture for what the risk is in terms of all the weather and the drought and everything that's going on. Where are the high risks in Canada? So when we turn it off, it'll give you a little bit of an idea here where you can see some of the fires. And there's that one near Merritt at Aspen Grove that's quite significant. It's all under control now, but you can see, for this year where in BC, this one might be a little bit easier to see because it's got the legend as well. The blue means under control, but already, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 startups, 6, 7 in BC. The Alberta ones are a little bit older. I wish they would take that data off of this map because then you could kind of see, just what's from this year. But yeah, BC quite some significant starts to the fire season, and you can see in BC that the fire weather index where it's quite high. So in that Kamloops area, going sort of northwest into Alkali Lake, Hanceville, Alexis Creek, right? Quite dry, not really great. And then we get into Lethbridge area in Alberta, and we've got we're getting into that fire weather index. Let me see if I can pull up the numbers here. So right now it's 16, right? And that's about mid-range on the fire weather index for that area. The blue is 0 to 5. So not is Peguis going to flood? That's a good question. It's forecasting. The last reports were forecasting. I'll get into the flood part here next, but I just wanted to kind of make sure I cover off the fire weather index. So not too high, not too bad in Atlantic Canada, but you can see in Atlantic Canada there have been some starts, and there are a couple out of control right down in New Brunswick already. So where those red dots are, those are out of control fires. And then you've got a couple being held and one that's under control. So 5 starts in New Brunswick already. And Atlantic Canada is going to be the place to watch because if you look at the current drought conditions, I'll move that for you a little bit. If you look at the current drought conditions for Atlantic Canada, like super, super high right now, basically at a severe drought. Now, the good news is the fire weather index for Atlantic Canada is not high right now. So, but even though the fire weather index is not high, we've already got 5 startups for that. Why TikTok does not want to, I got to deal with this little warning from TikTok because they think I'm violating some sort of community standard again. There we go. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. And then when we look at, even though there's some fires going on in BC, the smoke is kind of all headed south. So it shouldn't be too bad for anybody, but definitely as the winds shift, because you can kind of see right now if we take a look at the wind forecast, it is going to shift a little bit. Like this is looking like it's going to get a little bit windier in the Kamloops area, down in Merritt, heading into the week, into Tuesday. So we'll see what that does in terms of dealing with those fires. That's contributes to the fire weather index as well. So yeah, a little bit starting to get into that that fire weather territory. And even Whitehorse up in the Yukon. When's that one from? April 9th. So they even had a small wildfire that's being held right now. So April 13th, kind of already starting to see some fires crop up. Now, if we move over to the flood risk, someone was asking about Pegasus. I think that I want to get the exact location for them because this is the flood map, and I want to make sure I get right on top of them because we'll see what the risk's looking like. Yeah, they're just kind of south of Dauphin and Fish River. Okay, so they're in this area. So you can see what the red is the red is an extreme risk of 25-year return period. So if we're looking specifically at those rivers, I think Pegasus is probably right on this. Is it close to Arborg, is it called? Maybe I'm not south enough. No, it should be in there. Like they have all through there, it's an extreme 25-year return period. So that is a high risk. Good morning, Northwest Territories. And I want to get right in. So I want to see where Arborg. Canada doesn't like to put Indigenous communities on this one map. Oh, so Arborg is quite south. So if we're looking at Arborg, then you get into Peguis, what must be in this that's the reserve there maybe. No, that's a moderate risk 200-year. Are they right on the river? I don't like this map because it doesn't give Indigenous communities. 1, 2, where is it? Oh, there it is. They do have it. Yeah. So there you go. Sorry, it took me a little bit. I'm trying to get used to this map. But this is Peguis. Someone was asking about Peguis. That's it right there in the middle of the screen. So yeah, it's high. It's an extreme risk 25-year return period to high risk 100 return year. So the red is where it would flood. That's the current conditions. So what that's saying is basically right now that's where it's going to flood even in the future. So this is a future model sometime between 2022 to 2060. That's where they're predicting an extreme flood. So if we're looking at current conditions, yeah, it's pretty high risk. Let's go to flood hazard, see if that gives us anything. Yeah, so that's kind of where some of the water would go, right, if there's flooding. So it's kind of high. It's pretty high. And you can kind of see if we zoom out in Canada, like there's a lot of flood risk still. But definitely, yeah, whether or not Peguis will flood or not is to be told. But the risk is high. So everything that they're doing in terms of TikTok seems to think that I'm doing something against their community guidelines. I have no idea what the hell's going on. All right. Anyway, so yeah, if you've got, as you look at this map of Canada, kind of within the 25-year, this is where we could see there's a high risk up, especially in the Yukon. I don't know if there's probably not a lot of communities in that area, but if you look at, I know there's like Old Crow is up here. There might be some other First Nations, but I know wildfire is sort of the talk of the day, talk of the time, but flood risk in Canada is still quite high. And I think regardless, even of the droughts, like here's the updated drought map for as of March 31st. Even though it's dry, you can see. So if I flash back, like if you look at the Yukon, Northwest Territories up in the north where it's white, and then you go back to the flood risk, like those areas are high for flood. So where there is not a lot of drought right now, those are areas that can be higher for flood. And if you look down in Winnipeg, where Peguis is, it is abnormally dry. But because it's overland flooding, because it's coming off the rivers, it doesn't really matter, right? Even though it's dry, you can still flood because it's overland flood. And if it's really dry, you would think that the water can absorb, or the land can absorb that water, but it tends to run off it more quickly, right? Because it's so dry. So yeah, it's in terms of those two natural hazards, like it's quite significant. And then I don't know, like when you get into like the Paw in Manitoba, it's, I wonder if I can put Google Maps on here. You can see on Google Maps, if I use a Google Map satellite, right? That's the 1 in 25 year inundation. So if there was a 1 in 25 year flood to occur, that's where you're going to see water. So pretty, it's always astonishing to kind of see how those things end up playing out with the weather. And again, if we go back to the fire weather index, that's the one, if we look kind of across, even into Saskatchewan, starting to creep up a little bit in the south. So whether or not it's going to make it probably will follow the same trajectory as last year. Because again, if you look at the drought map for that same area for Saskatchewan, you can kind of see the drought is just starting to back away a little bit southwest of Saskatoon. But I don't think that will last long. That's just kind of like the snow melt, right? It is going to inundate most of the country, and you're going to see Winnipeg too. That's going to move probably into the severe drought. Maybe if it does hit extreme drought this year, it could hit extreme drought by 2030. I'm not saying that for sure, but the way that the drought in Canada has been going, this sort of mid stretch where you can kind of see that letter L over to north of Saskatoon, those could be some extreme drought areas. Anywhere now you see the darker brown, that could all be considered extreme to exceptional in the next half decade. So very interesting to kind of watch how, this progresses, and even to watch how the drought has shifted a little bit the last couple months. It's come down a bit, but that's just because now we're getting into the melt. What is Norman Wells NT looking like for drought this year? We still have tons of snow. I can do a quick check of that one, because that is, you're just kind of west of Great Bear Lake. Yeah, that area is like fully dry, right? Because if you can kind of see it right now, Yellowknife is there. Yeah, that Norman Wells is in that one patch. It's super dry. And if we go back to, I'll see if I can get the drought map from previous years. I think I've got it. Might have it here really quickly. See if it lets me go back. I know where I have it. Okay, so this was the drought map as of February. So you can see how the snow is helping. Let's see if I can zoom in here for you. The snow is definitely helping, but it's not a whole lot, right? That's what it looked like coming out of December. And you can see with these fire danger maps, like from last summer, like look at that area. It's just super dry in there. So I suspect it's just going to continue to stay really droughty up there and get even worse to extreme, because there's nothing indicating in any of the forecasts that the weather is going to, there's going to be enough precipitation in the next 5 years to deal with a lot of that. And we already saw one start up in Yukon, but luckily you don't have any fire starts recently. So yeah. Other quick things that I wanted to go through. I just did I'll bring this over. I'm gonna post this on the Patreon if anybody wants to download these briefings. But there's that active state of emergency for the ongoing mental health crisis, and it's in this community here, Nisi Chawa. Someone help me with my Cree. Yeah, they've responded to 500 mental health related calls annually in the community, 80% of those expressing suicidal ideation. So if you need any support with your own mental health, here's some numbers. I'm going to zoom in on that. There's some numbers for you if you need that, but please reach out to somebody if you need that support. There's also interesting toxic drug supply going on in Anishinaabeg. Reported a sharp spike in overdoses in Nipissing First Nation. So that's interesting. Lots of drug overdose poisonings. There was an infrastructure emergency in Nunavik at this community. I've not gotten my pronunciations good enough yet. I need someone to come on here and help me. But yeah, it was heating and technical issues in the building. So that's a good example of even why you don't need an emergency management plan just for like the big ones, fires, floods, right? This one just says heating and technical issues. So obviously maybe a boiler issue, or it could have been a power issue, whatever it is. They now have to relocate 13 residents, 10 of whom are either bedridden or in wheelchairs. And, in communities where housing is already an issue, that's not an easy task, especially if you're way, way, way up in the north. Yeah, no major evacuations reported yet for First Nations, and it's going to get off to a quiet start. But yeah, the lingering drought and a warm summer is going to, tip those scales. And if you don't know Mike Flanagan, he's a wildfire researcher out of the U of A. He's kind of sort of the leading one of the go-to experts for wildfire science in Canada. And he's basically saying this year will be a litmus test for whether Canada's wildfire seasons have entered a new reality, meaning his narrative used to be there will be bad fire years and there will be quiet years, but he's beginning to think at a national scale, most years are going to be bad fire years. So when someone like Mike Flanagan is making a statement like that, you really have to listen to that. What else does he say here? Stormy winter left a fairly deep snowpack. However, exceptions include southern BC into southern Alberta and southwest Saskatchewan, which have already seen some wildfire conductive conditions emerge. New drought-stricken New Brunswick, areas around Hudson's Bay and the eastern Northwest Territories also have lower than normal snowfall. So that really aligns with the fire starts that we're seeing in BC and Atlantic Canada, especially New Brunswick. So, and these, this is, yeah, it's just going to be bad fire years. Flooding. So just Peguis has had that issue. No evacuation orders related to flooding have been reported this morning. However, spring flood season is underway across the country. And what's this one that's saying? Bilateral agreement with province of Ontario to strengthen province's response. Yeah, they just announced a lot of support in Ontario. So that'll be helpful. Drinking water advisories. There's still 40 active long-term drinking water advisories on public systems on reserve in 37 communities. And Ontario has the highest at 29 active advisories in 27 communities. Saskatchewan has 5 active in 4. Manitoba has 6 active in 6 communities. And there's also 25 short-term drinking water advisories for First Nations. So Deer Lake, though, First Nation in Ontario lifted its drinking water advisory April 9th after completing repairs. That's good. But you never know how long those repairs are going to take, right? Or last. I mean, I've been in nations where they've lifted the boil water advisory only to put it back on in 2 weeks. Those boil water advisories are hard to keep up with. Yeah, then we've done a lot of discussion around the policy funding that ISK has recently announced, right? The $783 million specific to emergency management, which is not really new money. I don't I wouldn't even say, even if there was like 30 or 40 million that is brand new, that's nothing. That's not a lot, right? Thanks for all the likes. So again, what ISK did was they amalgamated health emergency management into the Emergency Management Assistance Program. So all that health money is being reported under EMAP, but the money already existed there for First Nations. And they're kind of saying that this 55.6 million for the Emergency Management Assistance Program is a big win, but it's not really, because the Emergency Management Assistance Program is always base funded with 30 million a year. And then the non-structural mitigation program always has some base funding. So what the government has just done is what they usually do. They've changed some of the budget line items, reorganized, right? Smoke and mirrors, cups and balls and cups, whatever you want to call it. And they're just dressing up this big announcement as a huge win, but it's not. And then I think a lot of people heard about the missing, murdered Indigenous women, the funding for that. I won't spend too much time on that because it's not really in my wheelhouse, but it's if you haven't heard of that, just go check it out. And Carney's government budgets cut $7 billion for Indigenous Services Canada and Crown Indigenous Relations. As of April 21st, 35 long-term advisors were still in place, with 9 advisories were still in effect. So, yeah, see what I mean? Like, it's all, you can't keep, it's hard to keep track of the money. Oh, this was good. Kiwewin First Nation, they launched their emergency response team on April 9th. So it's going to enhance communities' ability to respond quickly and effectively, especially when medical emergencies occur. Saskatchewan communities can apply for First Nations Métis community partnership projects and sponsorships, and the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Community Response Fund. So if you're in Saskatchewan, might want to check out those grants. And fire funding in BC, Fire Smart funding. If you're in BC, applications for evacuation route and public notification plans, 40 grand up until April 24th. So really quick for weather, Manitoba, going to get some rain, overnight showers, clear mix of sun and cloud. Monday with highs rising through midweek. A cold snap with possible flurries returns by Thursday, Friday. Northern Manitoba communities watch for ongoing freezing thaw cycles. BC, showers expected Monday, Tuesday. Temperatures return towards seasonal norms by midweek. And then, southern Alberta, southern BC, southwest Saskatchewan, dry and warm, elevated wildfire risk already present in those areas. So again, I'll just keep up some key resource numbers here if you need them, especially for mental health, with all the sources for this briefing. Trying to expand the sourcing list. These were all as of 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. So always good to, with the information I provide, just stay on top of it so you get the latest information. This is just a moment in time. And then with the maps, you can go into our Patreon and check our resource post. It's going to be, Northwest Territories. I mean, all I can do is bring up sort of the data that I have, right? And what I'm relying on right now is for Northwest Territories is the drought. So yes, it is really dry in the Northwest Territories. You can see like where Yellowknife is, it's just like over, like I would say, what is that? 75% of the Northwest Territories is in a abnormally dry, moderate drought, severe drought situation. Right now, the fire weather index is okay. It's in a, basically 0, which is because of the snowmelt, probably. But we're going to be watching here daily how that fire weather index changes compared to the rest of Canada. Well, I mean, again, I have to rely on the drought map. And if you look at the rest of Canada, I would say Northwest Territories as a whole and Atlantic Canada are probably the worst, right? You've got some spots in Quebec, but in terms of like an entire geographical area, like look at New Brunswick. Like New Brunswick and Northwest Territories are probably the two worst off in terms of drought, and then Manitoba right? But I'll bring up, I'll show you last year's, like just to give you some context. About where we ended the year. So this one is just from February. So look at what the drought levels were in February for Northwest Territories. Let me put that tab there. Compared to, today. So there has been it's gotten better, but I fully suspect that, the drought for Northwest Territories is going to get more like this. And what those L's mean is long term, right? So that it's great. It's going to be severe drought greater than 6 months. And so if we're already looking at, long term drought in the severe drought range with the heat we're going to get this summer, it's Northwest Territories needs to stay vigilant, especially Yellowknife and all the communities up there. So if you have any other questions, let me know. What about Northern Quebec? Yeah, Northern Quebec, you can see the drought conditions right now, severe to abnormally dry to severe drought. You're welcome. My unsolicited opinions. I would definitely take some more solicited opinions. But look at Quebec in February, right? Look how dry it is. But the good news is right now, the fire weather index for Quebec is basically it's very low. You get into the Montreal area, you're starting to see a little bit of higher risk, but for now it's not bad. But we're definitely going to see this change. This fire weather index map is going to start to light up as we move into May, right? Because I think there's the warming trend is going to hit us end of April. Like we're going to get a little bit more snow and stuff, but and rain in some areas, but it's not going to take long for this fire weather index to change over. Yeah, you're getting fires there. I'm going to just double check where you are exactly. You're just under, you're in that little area, right? Just there's that little tip of that yellow. I'll zoom in, right? You're just in that little area there where it's quite abnormally dry. And then if we look last year, you were totally inundated with abnormally dry. And whether that continues to creep up, that drought continues to creep up, I don't know. But definitely, you're going to see some continuing drought where you are. 2 years ago was bad. Yeah, 2 years ago for sure was bad. Was really bad everywhere. I should see if I have let me just see if I have a historical map. Yeah, so I think this one is accurate. I'll probably say, this was 2023. That was the really, really bad fire year. So you can look, especially down in Saskatchewan there, that area, right up in Yellowknife where they had the big evacuation in Yellowknife. Look at how that's all extreme drought. So you can really see how things are changing. But I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all moves forward. So I'll just go into some quick other announcements if you want to see what else we've got on the docket coming up that you might be interested in. So this Wednesday we've got Stacy is going to be doing a talk on Indigenous culture and emergency management, and Terrence Bear from Always Moving Forward will be opening for him. So if you want to register for that, you can access our Patreon for the link, or what I can put it into the comments here if anybody wants it. That's coming up. We also have a couple podcasts coming out. One is on Indigenous-led change management with Tanya Tarago. Hope I said her name right. Or Eagle Feather Woman. That podcast is going to be coming out this week, along with Terrence Bear's podcast from Always Moving Forward. That'll be coming out this week, so you'll be able to listen to those. And the Terrence's story is really good, and what he's doing to help Indigenous youth. And then Tanya T's consulting, she does Indigenous-led change management, and she's been doing some work with like the cooperators and Starbucks, like some very big organizations, on helping, you know, in terms of economic development, helping to get more insurance available for First Nations on reserve insurance. So some really interesting stories